well, very well preserved, without a gray hair or a wrinkle, with fair skin and light eyes, and hair the color of hemp. Her eyelashes were lighter still, so light as to be almost white, the white not in fashion at the time, but about to come into fashion, of a creamy tinge. She was not a clever woman by any means, not a woman of broad sympathies, but a woman who generally had her own way through the force and energy of her character. And as that force was always directed in one direction, and her energy always exerted for one purpose, she accomplished more than did many far cleverer women. She rarely failed to carry her point, whatever that point was. Whatever that point was, it was invariably one that revolved about herself, as the moon about the earth in the universe, as Papageno about Papagena in the magic flute, and as the cork attached to the cat's tail in the nursery. If Mrs. Sidebottom had been a really clever woman, she would have concealed her ends and aims, as those who are smuggling lace or silk coil them about them, and hide them in their umbrellas, under their cloaks, and in their bosoms. But she lacked this cleverness, or failed to admit that selfish aims were contraband. We are all selfish, from the smallest herb that strives to outrun and smother those herbs that grow about it, through the robin, Pecksy, that snaps the worm from its sister Flapsy, and the dog that holds the manger against the ox, to ourselves, the crown of creation, and the climax of self-seeking. But we do not show it. The snail has telescopic eyes, wherewith to peer for something he may appropriate to himself. But the snail, when he thinks himself observed, withdraws his horns and conceals them behind a dimple. Mrs. Sidebottom was either too eager or too careless, or, for charity hopeth all things, too sincere, to disguise her horns. She thrust them this way, that way, they went up to take bird's-eye views, they dived beneath to survey matters subterranean, they went round corners, described corkscrews, to observe things from every conceivable aspect. They were thrust down throats and into pockets, and, though small, were of thousandfold magnifying power, like those of a fly, and like those of a prophet, saw into futurity, and like those of the historian, explored the past. In a lounging chair also near the fire, but not monopolizing the middle like his mother, sat Captain Pennycomequick, the son of Mrs. Sidebottom. He wore a smoking jacket braided with red or brown, and was engaged languidly on a cigarette case, looking for a suitable cigarette. Mrs. Sidebottom's maiden name had been Pennycomequick, and as she despised her married name, even when accentuated past recognition, she had persuaded her son to exchange his designation, by royal license, to Pennycomequick. But euphony was not the sole or principal motive in Mrs. Sidebottom that induced her to move her son to make this alteration. She was the daughter of a manufacturer, now some time deceased, in the large Yorkshire village or small town of Murgatroyd, in the West Riding, by his second wife. Her half-brother by the first wife now owned the mill, was the head and prop of the family, and was esteemed to be rich. She was moderately well provided for. She had a sort of lien on the factory, and the late Mr. Sidebottom, solicitor, had left something. But what is 400 per annum to a woman with a son in the army dependent on her, and with a soul too big for her purse, with large requirements, an ambition that could only be satisfied on 1,000 a year? Would any stomach be content on half rations that had capacity for whole ones? On the fringe of the Arctic Circle, a song is sung that Iceland is the fairest land that ever the sun beheld, but it is only sung by those who have never been elsewhere. Now Mrs. Sidebottom had seen much more luxuriant and snugger conditions of existence than that which can be maintained on 400 a year. For instance, her friend Mrs. Tompkins, having 600, was able to keep a little carriage, and Miss Jones, on 1,000, had a footman and a butler. Consequently, Mrs. Sidebottom was by no means inclined to acquiesce in a boreal and glacial existence of 400, and say that it was the best of states that ever the sun beheld. Mrs. Sidebottom's half-brother, Jeremiah Pennycomequick, was unmarried.